Morning.
The first question I have is a really easy one. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to try to not pick up the mic, which is threatening to do, unless my voice gets too flat. So, good morning. We're here today to talk about integrated marketing communication. And what we named this presentation is sort of the sum is greater than the parts, or in the catalog I think you have it as when 1 + 1 = 5 or something to that effect. And really why that is because when you do your marketing right, and obviously it's not an easy task, what you get is something more than the simple tasks that you're doing one-on-one. So how do we know how to get it right? So we're going to start today with covering these topics. Who is spending what on marketing, how much, and why? What are they spending it on? How do you make that kind of spend and those kind of choices work for you? How do you reach the audiences that you want? And in what way should you reach them? And in the end, how does it come together? Okay? I got a lot of slides. I don't spend a lot of time talking with each one, but we're short on time, so I'm going to just move along in a good clip, okay? We're going to do Ask Our Experts at the end, and along with a Q&A. My name is Brooke. I'm the General Manager of SNMG, which is Sierra Nevada Media Group. And you might not know what that is, but if you look at some of the brands up there, you'll probably get a good idea, or at least recognize some of them. We have 7 newspapers and their websites. We distribute to 1.33 million pubs, over to 880,000 people, and those people also consume 3.1 million website pages. We have 4 magazines, we have 2 online brands, and we have 12 different marketing services. So we do a lot. And we're less familiar by our parent company name, SNMG, than we are by some of these brands that you're familiar with. Now, if you look at this cutting edge map, you can tell it's really up to date. Every place that there is a star in this area is where we have an office and a publication. Where you see the circle is all the areas that we cover with all of our products. And the truth be told, with a lot of our digital products, we can go well beyond that. I mean, honestly, if you wanted to reach somebody in Ethiopia, you could certainly do that with some of our products. But this is the area that we work the hardest to serve. Now, for the rest of this presentation, unless it says otherwise, the data that we have in here comes from Burrell & Associates, which is a nationally renowned and highly regarded media research company. Okay, we see their data frequently in Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Ad Age, Forbes, and of course now you're going to see it here. All right, before I go big, I want to tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from. I've loved media since I was a kid. I mean, been obsessed. And so I'm really glad to say that I've had the chance to work in every single kind of media except for radio, and that includes feature films. To give you a little background, I started out in print. I did the whole .com thing with mom.com. I also helped the Baltimore Sun back in 1996 launch its first website. I wrote 44 episodes for a cyber soap at the time. I produced a movie by the time I was 30. And probably one of the biggest names on my resume is the fact that I launched the first digital strategy for Red Bull. But I will tell you that the thing that I'm most proud of is the work that I do with companies like SNMG and why I'm here today. It's because in my passion for media, if you want to go to it, if you want to talk about someone's why, I'm really interested in helping local media companies do what they do best, which is serve communities and also serve the local businesses, right? So if I can take what I know to that and help everybody do better, that makes me really happy. The other thing I'm proud of is when you go through this presentation, you're going to see a lot of media information, and the people here and here are all experts in that information, and I'm really proud to say they're going to make me look really smart. And I'm lucky to have access to them. And the truth is, if you wanted to, you could have access to them too. But we'll talk about that later. So first, let's start out big. Nationally, when you look at what people spend their advertising dollar on, you can see that they still spend it on everything. And there's a reason for that. Basically, if I'm to cut to the chase, the reason is, as I alluded starting, is it all works better together. And we'll get into that more. I think it is notable to notice, though, that almost a full 50% is now spent online. And if you look at that 50% and you break it down even further, a full 70% is spent on targeting. And there's a reason for that, and we'll talk about that later too. But keep those in the back of your mind. Now, we know what it looks like nationally. Let's talk about what it looks like locally. And spoilers, as much as we all like to think that our markets are different, generally they aren't. So let's start by talking a little bit about this region. How many people have seen a lot of these stats about how, in the surrounding area is going to grow? And this is not news, right? But it does put into perspective what those demographics look like and what kind of opportunities are going to be emerging. And when you look at how this area has spent on advertising, it's the exact same distribution with the bump significantly online. Everything has grown year over year, but of course digital has grown that much more. That number in this little town in DMA 100 is $348 million to be spent in advertising in this 13-county area from 47,000 businesses. Think about that. So you wonder how much money is spent in a town like this. How much are people marketing? The answer is a lot. All right. So if all these people are spending all this money, how do you figure out what you should spend? The easiest thing to remember, and if you look at what Gartner market research says, is that a great rule of thumb is 10% of your revenue. 10%. Now, it goes down a little for smaller companies, but not a whole lot. It goes down to like 9%. And for larger companies over the scale, it only goes up to 12 or 13% at best. So you can be safe at assuming that not only should you be budgeting 10%, but you can bet just about everything, or at least that 348 million, that your competitors are probably spending 10%. Okay, so not everything is equal. Commerce marketing accounts for 8% of the marketing budget. And when you look at retail and financial services, especially in digital commerce and on the B2B, it goes to 9%. Now, here's what's really interesting. When you look at the increase of where people are spending on digital, nearly 2/3 plan to increase spending on digital factors, contributing to the increase. So part of the reason is that flat out people are shifting dollars. Some of that is the decline of organic social performance, and the other is the rising importance of video. How many have kids under the age of 18? And do they watch regular TV, or are they on YouTube all the time? And they're not even on the smart TVs, unless they're watching YouTube. All right. So that really just backs that up. Now, you're thinking, why do I need to spend 10%? It's a small market, people know who I am. Well, here's a basic stat that puts it to you pretty clearly. When businesses spend that kind of money, they get 20% more from their sales online than simply using the telephone. So, it means if you're a $500,000 business, that if you don't go digital, you're leaving $100 grand on the table And I gotta tell you, I don't know anybody who can afford to leave 100 grand on the table, especially in today's economy. So let's talk about the consumer. When you spend that 10%, what are you trying to do? And this is true for B2C or B2B, because the behavior and the consumption of media is essentially the same. It's all multimedia, multi-screen, multitaskers. And 81% of buyers, consumers of anything, do research before they make an in-store choice or they choose a restaurant. I can't imagine that any of you decide where to go without checking out Yelp or some other sources, or just simply doing a Google search, finding out what's good. Now, how many people are used to seeing this in their household or around places? This is not unusual, right? Okay, so that's a hard group to reach, except that they've got their faces in the screen that you can actually use to reach them. So we'll talk about that later. But we like to blame young folks for being distracted. But the truth is, they're not the only ones. Before we go all kids these days, baby boomers, millennials, Gen Xers, we're all multi-screen all the time, and we're all distracted. So how can you reach them? Well, I think before we answer that question, we have to look at how things have changed. 100 years ago, advertising, you had three choices. You had your billboards, you had your magazines, you had your newspapers. That was it. So in order to be a savvy marketer, you didn't have to know much. You'd probably know your regular business, and you would know how to market. It wasn't that taxing. So 50 years later, you look at the age of Mad Men, and these are all still pretty familiar, but now you're up to 7. And of course, as a result, you have a lot of ad agencies popping up. Now you go back to the age of Madonna, which is now 28 years ago. Let that sink in. I'm like, nuh-uh. We were talking about this the other day, and there was 25 years up there, and our youngster over here said, I think that's not 25 years. I'm like, so it is, in fact, 28 years. And now we have 8 choices. And then you have the Madonna wannabe with better pipes, Lady Gaga. Advertising in 2017, in her time, is now the standard 10 that we often talk about. But it doesn't stop there. Basically, these days, if you can stick an ad on it, they'll sell you that space. So you almost, in that way, have unlimited choices. And of course, there's the World Wide Web. It's a really old school picture, that's kind of why I like it. But if you look under the hood in the old triple doves, it really looks like this. Your choices exponentially expand. And you probably only recognize 3 or 4 of the names or platforms or advertising opportunities up there. And I'm guessing that from the time that I look at this, 2012, I'm guessing half of them are out of business and they're 10 times as many. Because it just keeps growing. 100? 1,000? Could be. So what this means is 2 things. One is that your customer is being bombarded all the time, right? That means they're really not just distracted, but they've learned to ignore it all because it's just 24/7 all the time. And then for you, you're like, all right, so there's all this going on and they're being bombarded all the time and they're distracted. So what do? I got into business to be a banker, or a chef, or a financier, or an attorney, or any number of things. Most of you didn't start your businesses or go into business because you were dying to be marketers in a really complicated age. Some of you do. So we need to figure out how to simplify that puzzle. And this is what we do. We put together enough of those pieces in the right way where we create what's called a full funnel marketing plan. Now, there are lots of opportunities to do this because different products do different things. And what you do here is you start out in the widest way, raising awareness, and you drive people down through the funnel. Each touch point is pushing them down what's called the buying continuum until you're in front of them at the right time for that buying decision. But wait, there's more. And I'm not going to tell you what that is until we go through this. Okay? Now, let's start with awareness. Everybody says, why do we have to do awareness? It's so 101. It's so print and digital display. It's so old school. Because if you go back to that really distracted user and you think about all the ways that they're being bombarded, how are they going to know to choose you if they have no awareness of you, right? So that's why the widest part of that funnel is awareness. Print is great for that. We know from the earlier slides that people still really love to spend money on print, and there's a reason for that for local businesses in particular. You read some of the stats. 7 out of 10 read the newspaper each week. 8 out of 10 newspaper readers take action within 30 days because they get an awareness. It may not be that moment, but they'll think of you as an option when it's time. And in fact, if you don't trust me, because who am I? There's this guy called Warren Buffett. You all have heard of him, right? Yeah? Okay, so he says, and this is the reason he's been buying up local newspapers, is because nobody builds a relationship with small communities and serves them in the way that local newspapers do. They're part of people's lives in a whole other way. And they're important as part of your mix. General digital display, say on your newspaper website, the same thing. You're just raising awareness. Now somebody might say, well, what about clicks and those kind of performance? Well, there's nothing wrong with that. But as my expert Kevin will tell you at some point, I can get clicks all day long, and they don't necessarily mean anything. I can put a monkey on there and say, click on the monkey and win $10,000. People click away, right? But if you do your display advertising right, you're raising awareness. Same as with a billboard, same as with a print ad. Now, once they know who you are, you want to convert them to a more known entity. You want to have some engagement. You want to have some interaction. And the best way to do that these days is social media. And here's why. Now, this says the new credibility pyramid. Because it used to be, and if I had more time I would show you all kinds of fun slides along those lines, that the highest credibility in those early days was actually in marketing and advertising. You would have ads that would say, 9 out of 10 doctors recommend you smoke. And people would go, oh, okay. And they would smoke. And then they would see Walter Cronkite on TV. And everything Walter said was a reason. I mean, the guy is pretty credible. They would believe it. But now, that's not true anymore. These generations are savvy. They understand what advertising is. They don't necessarily trust the news. Can you imagine? Sometimes they'll trust experts like doctors, but who do they really trust? And where do they talk to those people? On social media. I'm telling you what, if a girlfriend of mine on social media says, I have this fabulous mascara, you have to try it, I'm going to be like, okay. Or I'm going to be more likely to say, okay. But here's the thing. You have to be a part of social media in the modern world to get that level of engagement. But it's not easy. You got into your business again to do that thing. But now you have to also be a publisher. And once you create the social media beast, you have to feed it. And you have to feed it right, or it can bite you. Right? We all know those horror stories. And getting to feed it regularly can be really hard when you have a business to run. Now let's talk about what it eats. It eats authentic, high-value content. When you buy, or when you set up, rather, a social media presence, what happens is, oh my gosh, I have a business, I have a platform, I'm going to get all these people, and I'm going to market to them all day long. I'm going to say, here's 10 cents off here, here's another promotion there. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to go somewhere else. Nobody wants to be marketed to out loud on social media. So you have to be more savvy than that. You have to give them authentic content of value. I know a guy who launched an entire Irish pub off of no other advertising, then he created a Facebook page and served nothing but basically beautiful Irish landscapes and all these things for people who are sentimental about being Irish. And he got this big following, and it worked. It wasn't a fun Chamber of Commerce presentation that day when I'm trying to explain to them that we can help them do all their advertising. The guy stands up and says, well, I launched my restaurant for free on social media, so worked for him. All right, but here's the thing that can really trip you up. Sometimes people try to game the system. When you have social media, that's really based on grassroots. Social media basically does what we all do every day, but amplifies it, right? We're social creatures. The way that we cooperate with each other or get anything done or have relationships or break up from relationships or whatever is because we're communicating. And content is the way that we communicate. And so you get something like Facebook, and all it is a tool to amplify that behavior. And it really amplifies that behavior. So it runs on that sort of natural grassroots behavior. So sometimes marketers will try to game that and pretend that they're just one of the gang on there and start telling you really great things about their mascara that they have to sell. But customers are pretty savvy, and they know when it's not real grassroots, and that's called AstroTurf. You don't want AstroTurf, because they know when you're not authentic. Here's some other annoying things you shouldn't be doing on any social media. Back to, they don't like to be marketed to. Do not post too many promotions. Don't use slang and jargon. That means nothing to them. They're going to think you're talking over their heads. They're going to hate you if you don't have personality. They're going to hate you if you have too much personality. It's that sweet spot. It's getting the voice right. And of course, not replying. Because one thing about being on all three screens and having social media is our internal timing expectations for replies is so high now. They expect it immediately. You know, you text somebody and you're like, oh my God, it's been 45 minutes. Where are they? They don't love me anymore. Your customers feel the same way. Now, because we have all these very large networks now, online, social media, but also websites and other media functions, and we know that content is the currency for those because that's how we communicate. What we now have is something called content marketing. So content marketing is building content and pushing it out through all the universes, including social media, and it should be authentic and valuable. When you do it right, it can be used in your blogging, long-form articles, infographics, video, and more. And when it's really interesting and engaging, people will share it and spread the word for you, which is really nice. So you get a little extra cost efficiency there. Making sure you tailor your content to that platform makes a difference. You know, what people expect to see on social media is incredibly visual. What people expect to see on a newspaper website might be a video or it might be an article. And you might not want the same long form in social media, as an example. Now here's the really cool thing. Because of the platform, or social media platforms, being really peer-driven and somewhat expert-oriented, when people in businesses talk business on social media, they want to hear from you as an expert. That's how they define value. So I have a tire company. I'm not going to sit there and say, today, we'll change your tires, you're going to do lug nuts for 40% off. I'm going to say, we saw our first snow up on IE. Have you gotten your chains? Do you need help getting them on? You probably don't need studs until 6 weeks from now, it's estimated. That's helpful. That's real information that makes me say, you've got my back. You're going to help me be successful and safe. And guess who I'm going to think of when it's time to buy tires? If you hand me a coupon, I don't care. If I'm not ready to buy tires, that's just annoying. And because of that expertise, of course, it helps you build a reputation. It encourages trust. IBM did a study that says that 56% of marketers believe that personalized content promotes higher engagement rates. and it influences conversions on your website. And those conversions aren't just sales, it's also further adoption of finding customers who are interested in people or businesses just like you. That's one of the great things about social media. If somebody follows you, they basically raise their hand and said, hey, you're kind of cool. I'd like to hear something from you. So don't abuse that, right? Like, you've already got their interest. Stop trying to get their attention. Just feed that interest. Show them you're on their side. Have that relationship. Along those lines, we all really focus on trying to market by not marketing, by pushing all this cool content out, right? But the real power of all social media everywhere, and I would say Twitter in particular, is often overlooked. It is your primary customer sentiment tool. And what does that mean? That means if you have really good ears and you follow the people that want you, you're going to hear them talk a lot about the things that affect how you build products and how you create your customer service experience. This is insight into customers that you have never had before. We're also obsessed with building our own network that we can push and publish and talk to, and we forget that now we have insights into their souls. And that gives you an opportunity to build really powerful products that resonate in your markets, that help them adopt it. They're like, how do they know me so well? Oh my God, this is awesome. This is your secret. Now, you've gotten close to them. They know you, you know them, trust one another, then what? All right, well, you make it a little more personal. This is where the targeting comes in, right? You know where they go, you know where they live, you know what they want, so you target them. And then when it's time to buy, there you are. And they're like, oh, my friend, I'm going to buy you, right? So targeting is kind of like stalking. And when you talk to people generationally, like you talk to boomers and they're really offended. And then you talk to Gen Xers and they're like, it's a little annoying, but I really don't mind that they remind me that I left those shoes that I really like in the shopping cart at Zappos. And then when you talk to the next generation down, they're like, no, it's cool, it's really helpful. Like, they see it as more information. So it's interesting how people's perceptions about the way the media works really ties into generational perceptions of things like privacy and interactivity. Now, there are 4 basic kinds of targeting. All of them are triggered by a certain kind of behavior or action. And most of those actions are tied to a qualifying event or piece of data. In other words, somebody is raising their hand in some way saying, I want you. Where are you? I'm ready to spend. And then we're like, oh, we got this. We're going to be right there. So you can do it with search targeting. Someone searches you, or better yet, your competitor. You follow them around, your competitor doesn't. Cool, right? Content marketing. Somebody goes someplace and they're trying to figure out, how to buy the right kind of liners for their coal chutes. Ceramic, because they don't break down. They're reading those articles. All of a sudden, they see an ad about coal chute liners. Site retargeting, the same thing. They're in research mode. They visited your site. They're checking it all out. They're getting the data to make a buying decision. And then for the next 2 days, every time they're somewhere online, you're like, hey, I know you were looking at this. You ready to buy yet? And most often, it works. Geofencing is geographically targeted. So if you had an event, or say you had a promotion, a one-day sale, you could target people who go by you and your retail establishment within a certain radius, who fit a certain profile, who might be just in the market for the item that you had on sale. This is the kind of response that targeting delivers. This is why people spend so much money on it. But of course it works best when you've taken the time to do the other things, which is why it's not the only thing that people spend money on, right? You see, we're starting to build that amplification. So, you can do the targeting, right? You see a 40% increase in your searches. You have lower bounce rates. You have longer time on the site that you spend so much money on, right? More pages visited, and more business. Now, we're not going to talk about websites in particular, unless you want to ask them about one later. But don't do the thing that I've seen so many clients do, where they buy targeting or they buy display advertising, and then they link to a part of the site that you actually can't convert into business. Like, you know, it's a restaurant, and it links to the About Us page and not the reservation page. Like, we can drive horses to your water all day long, but if they get there and there's nothing to drink, they're going to go somewhere else. So do your part. Now, you're thinking, man, I got this. We got relationships, we got awareness, they're buying us, they're hanging out. Job's done. No, it's not. It's actually just getting started. This is where it actually starts to get good. This is where you start to see the sum being greater than the parts. And the advocacy and relationship bit. Think about what you've done. You have now spent a lot of time with these people, and you've given them a good, satisfying experience at every touch point, including when they made a purchase, correct? So you're pretty happy together, you and your customer. All right, how many people here are old enough to know who these people are? Because I put it up and my son was like, who's that? I'm like, never mind. So right now your customer's really happy, and you're like, at some point they'll come back. That'll be good. They had a great experience. But the truth is, you're missing the point. At this point, they love you. You have not given them any reason to not. And what that means, just like people of all these brands that you all know very well, is they talk to their peers, right? And they say, they're awesome, I love them. And then those people buy. And now what has your money done, right? All that money that you spent to get one customer, that customer is now not only bought from you, he's doing all the work for you. And he might even be evangelical. And that means that not only is he doing the work for you, but if you make a mistake, say you put new Coke out there, and they love Coke, they're gonna go, yeah, that new Coke kind of sucks. They didn't mean it. And then when you take it back, they're like, see? And they do your dirty work too. So obviously it's very complicated. We have all kinds of parts. There are still things that do some of those jobs that we obviously don't have a chance to get to. But that's a basic functioning marketing funnel plan. And when you put the pieces together right, that puzzle becomes the whole world. And it doesn't look right until you put it all together. Thank you for your time. What we're going to do now is we're going to have some questions by our lovely moderator, Kirsten McGregor, who is the GM and publisher for the NNBW. And she's going to start with our experts here and ask them very particular questions. And then you should feel free to jump in anytime and ask about anything we brought up along the way. And I want to come back to one other point. If you do decide to work with us, you get these same experts that I have. Okay? So come on up, Kirsten.
Thank you, Brooke. That was great. So now we have the opportunity to pick everybody's brains and dialogue and have a discussion as to what does this all mean and how are we going to move forward? How does this apply to your individual businesses? And so that's what we're hoping to achieve during the second 20 minutes of this education session. So my first question is directed towards Mick.
Okay, Kirsten, let's take a moment and have them say who they are and what their expertise is.
Yes,
so that
most
way
definitely.
Everybody knows their superpower
Yeah.
on face.
So Mick, what is your superpower?
My real superpower or my professional superpower? So I'm Director of Sales at Sierra Nevada Media Group. I'm supposedly the print guru. And so I've been in newsprint for quite some time in San Diego. I worked with the Tribune Publishing, LA Times, Chicago Sun, that sort of stuff. And so I was involved in community publishing in San Diego.
Excellent.
And now I'm here.
Okay. Karen.
Yes, my name is Karen Roblin, and I'm the Director of Content for SNMG. And essentially, I'm the social media guru. since I'll just piggyback off.
Sure.
I like the theme. And basically I oversee online and social media strategy for all of the brands that you saw within the SNMG umbrella. So Nevada Appeal, Healthy Beginnings, Lamont Belly News, Record Courier, so on and so forth.
Kevin?
I'm Director of Digital for Sierra Nevada Media Group. I handle all things digital marketing, digital advertising, e-commerce, things like that. I have experience working with multi-million-dollar brands for their e-commerce and digital marketing. Also come from the Amazon world, where that e-commerce flow is, everything important.
And Brooke Bentley.
I'm the social media and content manager for SNMG, which means I work really closely with the business development managers across our publications, as well as new clients, to incorporate social media into their marketing goals.
Excellent. So we will start now with Mick. I have a question for you about print. So what is the value of newspapers, and what does it bring to marketers? And what would you want people to know about the perception that they have around the demise of print, and is it going the way of the phone book?
That's a lot of questions. First and foremost, let me speak into the yellow pages. They are very good because they actually prop your monitor up. So it's at eye level. So please don't ever throw out a yellow pages because it's a cheap monitor stand. But in all seriousness, and honestly, you can't. It's like 50 newspapers to do the same sort of thing. So it doesn't really work that well. But to answer your question, look, as Brooke alluded to earlier in her presentation, yes, print is going down from a national daily level. So if you're talking LA Times, if you're talking, San Francisco Chronicle and those sort of things, absolutely that's going down. It's not going down to the extent that people are saying it's going down, but it is declining somewhat. Hence the reason why they're putting a lot of their energies into the digital realm. Community newspapers is the exact opposite. And I liken it to the fact that you're in a certain area of the community and you have a community newspaper. You're going to get high school sports. You're going to hear from the local mayor. You're going to get chamber updates. Grandma and Grandpa are going to see little Johnny in the newspaper, and they're going to buy 50 copies and send them out to Aunt Martha and Uncle Fred all over the place. And so community newspapers in particular are growing. Warren Buffett spent $344 million last year to buy 28 community newspaper groups. With the Los Angeles Times, they had 47 community newspapers under the LA Times, because you're not going to get community news in those larger publications. So community newspapers, print is growing. The big guys are buying up more small publications as opposed to the big publications. And so if you really want to connect with your community and create awareness for your business or your brand, then definitely, from the print guy, community newspapers is definitely where it's at.
Excellent, thank you. Karen, question for you.
Yeah.
With all the different ways to market your company digitally, what do you feel is the most cost-effective for conversion and why? And what do you recommend marketers do to get the most out of the traffic that they do drive to their sites?
So this is more of a marketing question for Kevin, or?
Actually, I'm sorry. Kevin, that
What's
was
that?
more a marketing set.
Can you please
question for
repeat
you.
the question?
I love you. But you should know that answer.
Sure, but I don't want to
Good
step on
delegate.
Kevin's toes.
So with all the different ways of marketing your company digitally,
Yeah.
what do you feel is the most cost-effective for conversion and why?
Well, yeah, I think what Brooke alluded to in the meeting, there's a reason people are spending so much money on targeting, and the key thing is relevancy. There's so many ads out there when you're online, whether it's on video or whether it's on a website, that if you can hit them and if it can be relevant based off what they've searched, based off content that they've read, based off places that they that they visited physically, then you can hit them with relevant ads, and that leads to higher click-through rates, that leads to higher website traffic, and in turn that leads to higher conversions. Digital targeting is really expanding. It's much more than what it used to be. 10 years ago it was based off geolocation. Now we can actually track people's searches on any website that they go to, track any content that they read, as I said, but then it's more than just display now too. So if you guys have interest in digital targeting, you can actually do video digital targeting now. So CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, any website that has a video, video player on their site, you can actually target people with video ads on these national websites based off search, contextual, geofencing, and things like that. So it's really, going to a whole nother level and should continue
And
to
that's
expand.
less expensive than TV, but it
Yeah.
gets you the same kind of association.
Right, so it's more than just, because obviously, historically, it's all about, it used to be just going to where the most people are, right? Now that's kind of going by the wayside just because there's so many ads out there. So relevancy is the key.
Thank you, thank you. Now Karen, back to, from a marketing perspective, what platforms should companies be on and why, both the B2B and the B2C?
Yeah, so I've had 12 years of experience in media and the past 5 in social media in particular. And once upon a time, a lot of people would ask me, what platform of social media should I be on? Like, there's so many. There's Facebook and Instagram, and once upon a time there's, Foursquare. There's all sorts of things going on. And back in the day, I used to always say, well, you need to own one first. Focus on that one, do it well, and then maybe look at what the next frontier should be. But these days, you really can't afford to let any sort of platform go by the wayside. I would always recommend looking at the big 3, which is Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But you still have to do it well. So you have to be authentic on all of those platforms. You need to understand that there are different audiences on each of those platforms. It's not the same person that you're going to reach on Facebook that you're going to reach on Instagram or on Twitter. And they're all going to be expecting different things from you depending on that platform. So basically, when you're thinking about being authentic, it comes back to that whole content side of things. What kind of content are you putting out there to show not only value, but to connect with your audience and actually generate a conversation around you and for them as well? Really creating those connections through content.
Great, thank you. And Brooke, speaking of content, with the increasing popularity of video, what's the most cost-effective way to create and use video assets in your marketing eye?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, Karen mentioned authenticity. So that's one of the huge pieces when you're working with video. And Brooke in her presentation mentioned now there's so many different platforms that people are reaching out to. So video kind of gives this really sweet opportunity to take advantage of both those pieces. You can be really authentic, and then you can get yourself up on a variety of platforms. And one of the things I think in terms of making it a great long-term investment is that evergreen video can bring people back to your brand months later, and there's a huge value there.
So you spend the money once, and you have an asset that you can reuse in various ways for a long time.
Absolutely.
Great, yeah. We have some time for some Q&A with our audience. Are there any pressing questions or issues specific around your businesses? Yes.
Where does LinkedIn have value in marketing?
Where does LinkedIn have value in marketing from a
Yeah.
social standpoint?
So LinkedIn, essentially LinkedIn has been really kind of rebranding itself and repositioning itself as more of a content-based platform, right? But when you think about user habits on LinkedIn, a lot of times people are looking for a job. They look, oh, I haven't updated this in 3 years and now I want a job, so let me update my LinkedIn profile. And then you get the alert that your friend did that and you're like, oh, they're looking for a job. But they're trying to shift away from that. They're trying to actually be more of a content platform. So if you have a company page on LinkedIn, it's always definitely recommended for a B2B business in particular. You really want to leverage yourself as a thought expert, as your industry expert, a thought leader, having the expertise. You're still going to do the same sort of best practices that you would on, say, maybe Facebook. You want to have great visuals with your content. You want to actually have content that resonates with that audience. It's just that instead of a B2C where you could reach anyone through targeting or just in general through your page, you really are probably particularly focusing on behind the scenes content of your company culture and or whatever positions you as an expert in your industry. So it's professional a little bit more than Facebook, but not to say that you can't have great content and a professional atmosphere on Facebook as well. It's just that you definitely are speaking to professionals and those interested in that side of things on LinkedIn. And it's growing. Every 2 seconds there's a new member on LinkedIn, which is a lot. We just
Yes?
In one of the early slides, you pointed out that
social media is becoming less organic and more of an advertising platform. How do you balance between an advertising platform and then this peer-to-peer? What happens, where's the tipping point? And then, Karen, what's the next frontier when Facebook becomes one series of sponsored post after sponsored post, people get turned off? Is it Tinder? Is it Snapchat? Is it
Tinder.
You know what I mean? I mean, what's the next
How do you
frontier?
know Tinder?
I make sure I investigate every single social media prospect for my clients.
New opportunities all the
Good
time.
opportunities all the time. But you see what I'm saying? You know,
Based on the business.
where's the tipping point
Yeah.
when organic loses the way? It's like, oh God, I'm shutting down.
Yeah,
Kinda do
yeah.
that.
Well, I mean, by and large, more so this year than the years, but every year it becomes more pay to play on social
Yes.
media. Absolutely. And it's in Facebook's and other platforms' best interest to make it more pay to play. They want to make money too. They want to own, and even Facebook, even copying all the Snapchat features, and you may have noticed pop up on your own platforms. They do not want to be what they did to MySpace. If you remember MySpace.
Yes.
I'm throwing it out there just in case. But they don't want to be the next MySpace. And when Snapchat was kind of this underdog coming up and really growing popularity among the new generation, millennials and beyond that, Generation Z perhaps is the best name for them now. Essentially, they were like, no, we are going to copy every single thing and keep everybody in our Facebook app, no matter what. So the tipping point, you do need to be aware that there are different opportunities to pay to play, and as far as boosting and targeted ad campaigns. But a lot of times people think that when they're making a Facebook ad campaign, they have to be like, sale this Saturday, you know, like almost a traditional. Really what they should be doing is putting some money behind the great content that they have on there and then target that content to the people who'd be most interested. So for instance, if you are an RV company, you're not necessarily just boosting content about RVs specifically. Think about your audience. They're interested in traveling, they're interested in vacations and exploring the United States. So what kind of content would actually resonate with them and put you in front of them and have them engage with you in that manner?
So content's king.
Content is king. Content's the
And
currency.
it was never anything other, despite what anyone would tell you. I would also add that basically what we're talking about is fundamentally two different things. Content as part of the engagement and the relationship you have with people who are already following you, that's a reinvestment, right, in that relationship. When you go pay for advertising, not only are you then maybe seeing more of the people that follow you, but you're using it to help grow your own audience. And people confuse those two all the time. Both things need to happen.
And as far as what's next, that was your second question.
Yeah.
I'm not going to just say Tinder.
Yeah.
I could, I guess. I guess it depends on your audience.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, YouTube started in 2005 as a dating website. I don't know if many people knew that. If you remember back in the day, dating sites, you know, they actually mailed you a VHS,
Right.
and you're like, oh, well, that was essentially what YouTube positioned itself as when it went live in 2005, except you uploaded a video online instead of through the mail on a VHS cassette. And so literally Snapchat was the biggest threat to Facebook going into this year. However, with everything that Facebook has done and pivoting as such with the features that they've copied and kind of embedded into Instagram and into Facebook, they've kind of quelled that entire rise. Snapchat itself renamed its entire company just Snap, and it changed its entire company description to a camera company, not a social media company. Which is really interesting. So this year's kind of been something I've been watching with that. As far as, you know, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Ello a few years ago. Yeah, okay, cool, yeah. You know, I love the name, and then when it came out, everyone was like, oh, this is gonna be the Facebook killer, it's so clean, and whatever, we've gotta get on it so you can get like the great handle so that when it blows up, you're gonna have a great handle, not like Karen Roblin 5, 10, 9, 7. Actually, my name's pretty unique, so I actually get my own handle, but that didn't do anything. So there's, every so often, there's platforms that get launched that really, they get tagged as like the Facebook killer, but so far we haven't seen that. Right now we have 2 billion active users on Facebook, 1 billion active daily users. It is the behemoth, and so you really have to have not just one generation adopting a new platform, you have to see it across generations, and the only thing you've really seen that so far has been Facebook. So you're going to have to see a multi-generational kind of upheaval away from Facebook.
Great.
I think there's
A lot of information. We have time for one more question. We've got about 4 minutes left. So let's take one more question and then Brooke will wrap up the session. But go ahead.
So
I don't know who this would be directed at, but I'm working for the university for a museum where our clientele literally spans people who are like 90 to university students who are 18. And so I'm just trying to figure out what's the best way to create content that's going to be able to hit like multiple generations.
Yeah, I mean, I think focusing on what brings them all there. What are those pieces that, you know, they all have in common as to why that they're coming to that point? And I think you can drive it two ways. I mean, maybe there's a reason for the 18-year-olds to be engaging with the older generation and kind of finding that sweet spot of where you're going to find them. So I think that looking back at those focus points of what brings them there and then really diving into where the value is there for them. And then that might mean tailoring it based on platform, but I definitely think that there's some probably core competencies that exist there that really drive that.
And also, I wouldn't be afraid to, you know, come up with separate campaigns to target each individual age group, because then they're all different, they all consume differently.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely don't be afraid to delegate, you know, target the specific age groups.
And as far as 90-year-olds, you know, you don't, I mean, you may not be able to reach them through Facebook, but you can reach their kids. You can reach the Gen Xers and target content about their parents and think about it outside the box. You may not speak to that actual person.
All right, first of all, let's give our panel a nice hand. You know, the thing that I'd like to leave you guys all with is the notion that, yeah, the marketing world is really complex, but if you pick some basics that do each of those tools and build a funnel, you can simplify it in a way that works for you. And you can swap out different tools there, but really just getting those functions right, then not only are you going to get the sales and the relationships, you're going to also get the nirvana of, you know, the brand adoption, the brand love, and that whole other level of evangelical devotion. So one of the things that we do at SNMG, and part of the reason that we have all of these experts, is because not only do we have media properties, but we have those marketing services. And we work hard with our communities, not only to serve them through our media, but to be able to reach any audience through building a funnel that you might be interested in, either locally, regionally, or even nationally. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you.